Welcome, everyone, to this special edition of Banfield, Angels and Aliens, the Vatican's secret UFO archives. Here's a mystery for you. Why would a true crime show devote a whole program to a newly anointed pope? The solution? Because the Pope isn't just the head of the Catholic Church and the Bishop of Rome and a moral figurehead for people of all faiths. He also controls the world's foremost repository of secrets. The Vatican archives are bursting with information that few human eyes, relatively few, have ever seen or ever will. God alone knows the scope of it, but shortly after the death of Pope Francis, we reported on the prospect that a new pope might just let a few rays of sunshine into that vast and heavily guarded treasure trove, and maybe let a few secrets out. Specifically, what the Vatican knows about extraterrestrial visitors and how the Vatican knows it. It turns out Pope Leo XIV has a spiritual connection to the Vatican's long history of astronomical research and a personal connection to a land where mysterious phenomena aren't confined to the heavens. They are literally carved into the ground. I'm going to dig into all of this, chapter and verse, in this jam-packed hour-long special on the connection between the Vatican and whatever truth may be out there. So let's get started. I sure didn't think when I got up today that I'd be covering a European election. But how often do just 133 men, just men, pick a leader for 1.4 billion people of all genders and races and cultures around the world? We officially have a new pope, and if you had Cardinal Bob from Chicago in your office pool, congrats. Until about 9 hours ago, an American pope seemed about as likely as a female pope. But now, as you may have heard, Cardinal Robert Prevost, holder of both U.S. and Peruvian citizenship, has become Pope Leo XIV. And that name is a very big reason we are taking our true crime hats off tonight and putting on our mystery hats. Or shall I say our mystery miters? Okay, a lot has been made already about why the successor of Peter and the immediate successor of Francis took the name Leo. The last Pope Leo ruled for 25 years at the end of the 19th century. He's known as the social justice pope, using the ultimate pulpit to speak up for workers' rights and economic fairness. In fact, the Vatican has now confirmed the new pope picked his new name for that very reason. But you know what else Pope Leo XIII did? He established the Vatican Observatory, cementing the Church's long-standing fascination with the heavens. Not just heaven, either. Even now, the Vatican operates a state-of-the-art telescope system on the outskirts of Rome and Mount Graham in Arizona. Vatican astronomers collaborate with astronomers in leading institutions worldwide. Their findings, their methods, and their research, like all Vatican records, are preserved for the ages, you guessed it, in the Vatican archives. And they could help answer an ancient debate. Whether centuries-old sightings of angels and other heavenly beings were actually extraterrestrials, non-human visitors from somewhere else in the universe, like the Tic Tacs that we've been seeing lately. Aliens or angels or anything you call them all, that's captivated UFO researchers and conspiracy theorists since the last Pope Leo wore that hat. And when Francis died, many hoped that the transition would bring about an opening of the archive doors. Pope Francis, by the way, just last fall authorized an expansion of the Vatican archives and library, which already comprise 50 miles of shelving. And since this is the 21st century, archivists are scrambling to digitize everything that's down there. The books, the files, even the parchment papers. The hunt for proof of alien life in the Vatican files picked up steam in 2023 when a former U.S. intelligence official named David Grush told Congress that the Vatican had been involved in a cover-up. David Grush later provided more details to News Nation's Ross Coulthart, and here is some of their conversation.
So let's start from the very beginning. You say it's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years?
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian Secret Services includes crude drawings of the UAPs. It's true, it's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. The Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945. And, you know, the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet?
Certainly.
A spokesperson for the archives told the Catholic News Service, and I quote, "I don't know where this Grush got the information. One can laugh at it," end quote. But is it laughable to think that the Vatican holds secret information on the existence of alien life forms? For more on that, I'm joined by the perfect guest tonight. Danny Sheehan is an attorney and former general counsel to the U.S. Jesuit headquarters in Washington. In the 1970s, he was tapped by President Carter to contact the Vatican about what they knew about UFOs. He's also the founder of the New Paradigm Institute, which informs the public about UFO phenomena. And next week, he'll be in Washington for a hearing with the chair of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets. Danny Sheehan, thank you for joining me. You are the perfect guest tonight in this nexus of the news and then the mystery that this show has been covering, and that is the mystery of UAPs and unidentified flying objects. Why, first of all, take me back, why did President Carter want to reach out to the Vatican?
Well, President Carter, when he was governor of Georgia, actually saw a UFO. Not something distant in the sky like a twinkling star, but, you know, the length of a football field away. He was at a Lions Club meeting when he was governor, and he and 11 other people saw a UFO craft a football field distance away. So as soon as he was elected president, one of the very first things he did was send for the head of the Central Intelligence Agency and ask him to come to Plains, Georgia, and brief the president-elect on the UFO issue. It turns out that CIA agent, that CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush, appointed by Gerald Ford when he took over after Nixon resigned. And the fact is, George H.W. Bush refused to brief the president, saying that the president had no need to know, and therefore he wasn't going to give him the information. So because of that, what President Carter did was he contacted the head of the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives and asked them to set up a Congressional Research Service investigation of all of the documents and evidence that was in the possession of our government about the UFO phenomenon and any extraterrestrial life form that might be responsible for them. And that was who contacted me at the Jesuit headquarters to have me contact the Vatican to get whatever information the Vatican had about the UFO phenomenon and about extraterrestrial life, so we could provide that to the president. So I got authority from the Jesuit order that was my base at that time in the headquarters to send the letter to the Vatican and ask for those files.
Well, here we are a half century later, and we have a new pope who seems to have this sort of slight connection, at least to the scientific heavens anyway. And I'm wondering if you think it's going to make any difference. Do you think that this new pope will actually help UFO enthusiasts and others gain access to whatever secrets lie beneath the Vatican?
I do believe so, yes. I believe that he has a history, as did Leo XIII, that preceded him, actually in trying to establish the relationship between the cutting edge of science and the most profound fundamental theological concepts of a metaphysical dimension that is not accessible by most people. That's the key to this man. He is a person who wants to bring together science and theology to be able to bring the Catholic Church into the 21st century, so we can begin to adjust the institutions of our planet to cope with the reality that there's an extraterrestrial, non-human civilization that surrounds us, and the fact that they've been coming and going from our planet at least since the detonation of the first nuclear explosion in 1945. So I think that he is going to be the disclosure pope, in the same way that we are going to have a disclosure of what the American government knows about this in the next handful of years.
Boy, you got me there. That's something that a lot of people have, obviously journalists, but a lot of people have been waiting for, and I hope you're right. But I do have this question. Should the Vatican be concerned about any kinds of revelations or truth about aliens? Doesn't it contradict the teachings of the Church if there are really aliens out there?
Well, what it does is it's different than the earliest first and second century theology that was developed by the Church at a point in time when 99.9% of all the people on the planet were completely illiterate and didn't travel more than 50 miles from the place where they were born. So that the formulation of these esoteric insights that the Church has about the nature of human consciousness, our capabilities to engage in telepathic communication, the communion of the saints, if you will, life everlasting, which has to do with potential reincarnation, the ability to levitate, for example, like some monks in the Catholic monasteries are capable of doing, like Jesus walked on water, the ability to transmute matter from, for example, water into wine. These are capabilities that deal with the kind of deepest scientific secrets about the relationship of human consciousness and the subatomic nature of reality. This is what's in the process of coming forward, and that's why many of the institutions of power on the planet right now are so reluctant to open up that box. But the Church has a fundamental responsibility to be the ushers in of a perception of our relationship to the universe, in our human consciousness to the evolution of our species. So I believe that the Church is going to play a major role in doing this, and they've issued a statement back in November of 2009 stating that in light of the fact that we've now got these new spaceborne telescopes and they're discovering more and more of these new exoplanets, it's now clear, as they said, that much sooner than we had previously anticipated, we're going to discover that life exists elsewhere in the universe. And therefore, the time has arrived for the beginning of that all-important conversation about the profound philosophical and theological questions that are posed to our human family by the discovery of life elsewhere in the universe. That's the moment that we have reached now, and this will be the Pope who governs the largest single denomination on our planet of 1.4 billion people to usher in this larger reality and integrate it with our sense of ourselves in the universe.
Danny, the one thing that I learned that was so surprising to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that the archives don't belong to the Vatican. They belong to the Pope. And so he is one person who can wave a magic wand and open that incredible labyrinth of information. But I also understand that there are politics that play out in the Vatican. It's just like any other organization. Could he be hamstrung by politics in the Vatican? Can he really just wave a wand and make it happen?
Well, we'll see. This really has to do with the kind of disposition of power that's within the College of Cardinals and within the Vatican structures themselves. Just like any president coming into office and discovering that there are different agencies and different protocols that are operational that the chief executive has to respect in order to get anything done, that Pope Leo XIV is going to discover that he has to navigate the power structures. He's going to have to become intimately familiar with them, but he has spent some substantial amount of time in the Vatican. He's quite familiar with some of those power dynamics. And I believe that he's going to try to lead the entire human family, not just the 1.4 billion Catholics, but the entire human family into a better understanding of our place in the universe and the relationship that our human species is going to play in relationship to the entire non-human civilization that surrounds us outside of our solar system. This is an extraordinary period of history that we're living through. The people that are listening to this program are going to be alive when this disclosure is made, not only by the United States government, but by the Vatican and by the leaders of the Jewish faith and the Hebrew, the Hindu faith, the Buddhist faith. All of the leaders of these major denominations on our planet know that our human family has much greater capabilities than we've been allowed to know about, and they know a lot more about the existence of this extraterrestrial civilization than they have yet publicly revealed. This is what's getting ready to happen in the next 5 to 6 years.
You know, David Grush, as the whistleblower testifying before Congress, talked about a cover-up, that the U.S. government has been involved in a decades-long cover-up. The exact language was akin to, it's an alien crashed aircraft recovery program that collects, stores, and re-engineers what they find, and that they are non-human dead pilots. All I have to say to that is that it is fascinating. I don't think it's impossible, but it sure is difficult to have upwards of 10 administrations since Carter all keep these secrets. And only David Grush is the one whistleblower who's come out and said something. And that's usually the story about a vast conspiracy. The more vast it gets, the more hard it is to contain. So why would something this explosive be so perfectly contained for so very, very long?
Well, actually, there are over 40 top secret classified experts from deep inside the federal government and various agencies who have already come forward and testified in secret behind closed doors to the Senate Intelligence Committee. So it's not just David Grush that is confirming this. There are all kinds of people, including Jay Stratton, who was the head of the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program inside the Pentagon, who has been in charge of trying to develop a weapon system out of the technology that's being recovered from these craft so that our government can establish full spectrum military dominance over the planet. So this is something that has to be addressed. This is not a legitimate objective of our national security to engage in that. And we have to be able to reach out and establish treaties with the other nation states, including Russia and China, in India and other major players, in all the NATO countries, to establish a treaty whereby we will all agree not to use any of this technology recovered from these craft for a weapon system. This is a critical thing that needs to be done. That's why our New Paradigm Institute in Washington, D.C. is dedicated not only to securing full disclosure of what our government knows about it, but also helping to formulate a new paradigm post-contact worldview, so that we can understand the value of our human family in the hierarchy of beings in the universe, so that we don't consider ourselves like some primitive tribe that gets discovered, in 1955, that there's a world outside of their island, so that their entire civilization collapsed, be that as it was. We have to start taking concrete steps to move step by step to adjust our major institutions, our geopolitical institutions, our economic institutions, our religious institutions, to accommodate this new information that is going to be made available, so that we can not only respect the other civilization, but we can be respected by them, so that we can, in fact, engage in a mutually respectful and mutually beneficial relationship between our two cultures. This is what has to be governed by people such as Pope Leo XIV now and the presidents of our country.
Well, let's hope that he will be the Pope of disclosure, or the disclosure Pope, as you put it. And we'll definitely have to have you back the minute we start hearing more from him. Thank you so much, Danny Sheehan. It's been good to talk to you. I appreciate this.
I appreciate it, Ashley. Thank you so much. Anytime.
Oh, great. Good, because we'll see you again. That's for sure. Whenever I have a question about any otherworldly phenomena, I often call Ben Hansen, who's the host of UFO Witness on Discovery Plus. He's just like Wikipedia of all things UFO. Here is a conversation we recently had about those Vatican files. Ben, it is so like crazy to think that there is a nexus between the Vatican and UFOs, but that's something that was actually discussed in testimony before Congress.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like straight out of a Dan Brown novel, you know, Da Vinci Code stuff.
Yeah.
Is the Catholic Church involved in a cover-up, something they don't want their membership or the world to know? You know, David Grush comes out and he talks about this 1933 case where supposedly the U.S. military was tipped off, like you said. They come in, take this UFO, this object, take possession of it at the end of World War II. And allegedly, the Catholic Church has not only records of that, but perhaps going back to centuries, documentation of UFOs or perhaps alien visitation.
So here's what, you know, if P then Q, I'm thinking, why would they keep everything a secret? Because if, you know, their followers, their congregants, beyond Catholics, if people start to realize that it's not an Adam and Eve story and it's not just Earth and there's a lot more to it, there goes religion.
I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, you know, that theory, because the idea is the same, you know, concept perhaps that you talk about. Perhaps was Jesus married? Did he have children? The canonical, you know, doctrine of many religions is very kind of set in stone. And so to go back and kind of rewrite history and to say, okay, well, perhaps not only we're not the only ones in the universe, but what if they don't look like us? Right? You have, you know, scriptural reference to making God in man's image. So what if they don't really look like us? Would that mean that people lose their faith? Would that mean that they're going to kind of panic and give up on religion? And what about the authority of religion and membership? So all those questions is kind of what the theory is as to why perhaps they believe that either people are not ready for this or that they should indefinitely keep it covered up.
Or you have to rewrite a few books to incorporate the universe instead of just Earth, you know. But I am curious about the official position that the Catholic Church takes on extraterrestrial possibilities.
Well, it kind of depends on who you talk to, right? So the keeper of the records or the secretary to the prefect of the archives has come out and said that they absolutely do not, they don't know where Grush got this idea. They said they don't have any documentation of extraterrestrial life, and they're dissuading researchers from asking anymore. So there's kind of like a process, sort of like filing a Freedom of Information Act. You can petition the Vatican, see what they say. Will you let us into your archives? And they're saying, stop looking for it. We don't have any of that here. Now, I personally do know of people who have had access to archives. And I do know, according to them, that the Catholic Church has kept records of things such as demonic possession for centuries, very detailed records. But as to the UFO subject, that's more of a mystery. Like you had mentioned in the beginning, 50 miles of shelving, they probably don't even know what they have in there. And I highly doubt it's digitized.
That's my assumption. Yeah, I highly doubt it. Yeah, looking at the books, they're almost falling apart. I only have like 30 seconds left, but is there any hope that the new pontiff might be a little more transparent, might open up the archives and let people take a look-see?
Well, I would just say that if you look at what happened under Pope Francis, they did revise the guidelines as to what is considered a miracle, how to investigate or accept something as supernatural. And so the new Pope probably will follow those same guidelines. It makes you kind of wonder, why now? Right? Is there something about now that they think might be coming down the road as to why they have to stay ahead of it and kind of have a standard by whereby they decide if something's authentic or not? So we'll see.
Ben Hansen from UFO Witness. So how long might it take to dig through the miles and the centuries of secrets underneath the Vatican and share that knowledge with the rest of us out here in the world? After the break, we'll go to Vatican City, where our News Nation correspondent has some insights on faith and reason and mysteries as old as time. That's next. A new day is just about to dawn in Rome, Italy, in more ways than one. It'll be the first full day on the job for a guy who already had a big job. As a cardinal, he was respected and influential, but as pope, Leo XIV now has to prove himself all over again to the whole wide world. And the former Chicago-born Cardinal Robert Prevost won't need a map to find his way around his new digs. We just hope that Pope Leo won't overlook a part of the Vatican that is deliberately kept out of sight. I'm talking about the Vatican archives. More than 35,000 volumes crammed into more than 50 miles of shelving beneath the Holy City. If you placed those end to end, they would reach from one end of Manhattan all the way to the other and back again, but 4 times over. That's something, right? Put into perspective. Included in the archives, papal letters, official documents, ancient ledgers, and if you believe the rumors, evidence of extraterrestrial life. The ultimate X-Files. Our Brian Enton talked all about this with News Nation's Susanna Pinto in Vatican City.
It just seems like a lot to go through. I wonder if anyone has even gone through everything to see if there is something in writing related to UAPs from that time period.
Brian, I'm sure there's a long line of historians and scholars who want to get into those archives and actually dig through. So, I think this is something that is going to play out over years and maybe even decades. So far, we haven't heard that type of information come out, and there's been no information published about that. So we'll just have to wait and see what comes out. We're talking about so much content from a pontificate, whether those are official letters, communications, all sorts of things that a pope does. And of course that was many years ago, but still the pope is a figure that communicates with not only Catholics but the world. So there's just a ton of information to go through.
It's interesting, though. I mean, the idea that the Vatican might know something related to this it isn't really that far-fetched. I don't think a lot of people realize that they have a whole unit of the Vatican dedicated to studying astronomy.
That's right. The Vatican has a Vatican observatory that dates back to the 16th century. So for the last 400 years, that observatory has been dedicated to studying astronomy, astrophysics, and really just the origins of the universe. So it's something that not a lot of people know about. It is dedicated to sort of the connection between faith and reason. So the Vatican says that their faith inspires the science that they're studying, and so that observatory is outside Rome, just not too far from here, near the papal summer residence, and they are very active and they do all sorts of things. In fact, just this summer they resumed their summer school for scholars and also students, undergraduates and graduate students who come to the Vatican Observatory for 4 weeks, and they discuss all these sorts of things, all the latest in astronomy and astrophysics. And that resumed after a 5-year hiatus. They had to take a break during COVID.
Our Brian Enton with Susanna Pinto. And before you can find the holy grail of UFO evidence or anything else, you need to know what it looks like and what it is exactly that you're looking for. My friends in Chicago are having a moment tonight, and to that I say amen. A proud Chicagoan posted this a while ago on X, quote, "Chicago is the only city to have a U.S. president and the Pope once call home." Chicago's Robert Prevost will now be better known the world over as Pope Leo XIV. But home for now is going to be the Vatican, which we're focused on tonight, because the Vatican is also home to the Vatican Archive, one of the most secretive and protected places in the world. Even respected and credentialed researchers have a tough time getting in there. And when they do, what they're allowed to see and to share is heavily regulated. We don't know for sure, but there is reason to believe those Vatican secrets may include evidence of UFOs. A former U.S. intelligence official turned whistleblower has testified before Congress that he knows about a cover-up of a UFO that was recovered by Mussolini's Italian army back in 1933. David Grush has said details of the alien craft were back-channeled through the Vatican and then over to us here in the U.S. David Grush shared the details with News Nation's Ross Coulthart, who spoke with our Brian Enton.
The Vatican has clearly kept secrets before, Ross. I mean, Susie mentioned that they're now opening up the documents. There's going to be a lot to go through. But, I mean, who's to say some of those documents didn't get pulled out?
Well, it's funny. I've talked to a friend of mine, Professor Diana Walsh-Pasulka, who wrote a great book called American Cosmic. And she was one of the few academics who's been given privileged access to the secret Vatican archives. And the way she describes it, it's quite extraordinary getting access. See, there's a whole process you have to go through to become sufficiently credentialed to be able to gain access. And even then, obviously, it's, as you say, it's at the discretion of the people who run the archive what you get to see. There are, just to give you an idea of the scale, the archive runs underground under the Vatican, and Diana's written that there are 53 miles of shelving. That's how much they have in the Vatican archive.
Wow, that is hard to even think about someone having time to go through all that, especially again if the historians were going in looking for other archives related to World War II, they may have not even been looking for this stuff. Maybe that'll change now. You know, since we've started covering this, science and religion, UFOs and religion, I mean, it's a tough topic for some folks who have a strong faith to go there.
Look, 390 years ago, it was the Vatican that tried Galileo as a heretic for arguing that the Earth wasn't at the center of the universe. And in nearly 400 years, I have to say, the Vatican has actually shown quite creditable openness to science. And in fact, they've held two conferences on the possibility of extraterrestrial life, one in 2005 and another in 2009. And back in 2009, Father Reverend Joseph Gabriel Funes, who was the head then of the Vatican Observatory, he actually said that believing that the universe may host aliens, even intelligent ones, does not contradict a faith in God. We are all God's children. How can we rule out that life may have developed elsewhere, he said. Just as there is a multitude of creatures on Earth, there could be other beings, even intelligent ones, created by God. This does not contradict our faith because we cannot put limits on God's creative freedom. And everything I've read about the Vatican suggests that a lot of the work they're doing at the moment is trying to demonstrate that there is no incompatibility between religious beliefs and good science. And in fact, they've also held a conference on evolution, the theory of evolution, and actually excluded the proponents of creative design. But there are factions in the Vatican that push the idea that there is a creative design and that evolution theory is wrong. But I would have to say the Vatican's shown an enormous open-minded to science. And I just wonder, I can only speculate, whether it's driven by information that it does possess, as Mr. Grush suggests.
Ross Coulthart with our Brian Enton. And still to come tonight, the Catholic Church isn't the only religion with real or suspected knowledge of UFOs. People of many other faiths, or no faith at all, have spotted glowing orbs in the sky, in some cases centuries before Catholicism even existed. So what do all those religions think about alien visitors? And what might first contact mean for all religions on Earth? That's next. Not that he didn't do this already, but the new Pope will definitely be spending a lot of time looking up for inspiration, for divine intervention, or maybe just to follow in the footsteps of the last Pope, Leo XIII, who, as we mentioned earlier in the show, established the Vatican Observatory that is still in service today. None of this is to say that Catholics have a monopoly on astronomy or extraterrestrial research or experiences. Almost every major religion has accounts of glowing objects in the sky and visits from what they've described as non-human beings. David Childress is a sought-after voice on the subject of ancient mysteries and unexplained phenomena. He spoke with my News Nation colleague, Brian Enton.
Are there other religions, I'm curious, David, that you know of in all the research that you've done that are more open to the idea?
Yeah, I would say there are, Hindus and Buddhists, Tibetans and whatnot. The idea of extraterrestrial life and things like that, I think they have no problem with that. And UFOs, particularly in Hindu and Buddhist tradition, they have UFOs. UFOs have been flying around for thousands of years, according to them. They call them Vimanas. They have whole texts about it. And so that's the other thing, say, with the Vatican, too, is that UFO sightings have been going on for thousands of years. In the Middle Ages in Italy, too, there were many UFO reports, and even painters painted flying saucers into their paintings and things like that. And, the Vatican would probably have some of those paintings in their, vast archives and stuff like that have UFOs in them. So the idea that, UFOs have been around there, and that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, the Hindus, the Buddhists, Mormons as well believe in extraterrestrial life. And they are also a religion that wouldn't have any problems with that. I think a lot of, modern day religions don't have a problem with life on other planets. And the idea that we're not alone in the universe is, a pretty standard idea now.
Yeah.
But it's still not something I think that major religions, and particularly the Catholic Church, wants to address.
That's David Childress with our Brian Enton. So here is a question for you. What do Hillary Clinton, Oprah, and the new Pope have in common? Yeah, I know, it sounds crazy to me too, but the answer is truly out of this world, and it is next. Have you ever heard about the time Hillary Clinton adopted an alien baby? Yeah? Yeah, me neither. How about the time that her husband Bill got a ringing endorsement from none other than an alien? The tabloids have had a lot to say about UFOs over the years, not to mention former First Family. And speaking of religion, as we have been for this whole show, aliens apparently aren't Catholic or Jewish or Buddhist. According to the tabloids, they worship Oprah Winfrey. And even America's biggest sporting event isn't safe from our extraterrestrial friends, because according to the tabs, aliens have used mind control in the Super Bowl. Stop the madness, you say? I'm with you. The newly elected Pope may just be the guy to do it. Pope Leo XIV is American, but also Peruvian. And Peru is a country with ancient roots to the unknown. If you've ever heard of the Nazca lines, you'll know that they're a group of massive symbols that are carved into the soil in southern Peru. And the largest among them stretches almost a quarter-mile in length. Scientists believe that the Nazca lines were made about 2,000 years ago. But that's about all they're certain of. Because exactly who constructed those lines and why they did it, that's still a mystery, leading some people to believe that the Nazca lines were not made by humans, but maybe instead aliens, an ancient UFO. But Peru's rugged terrain isn't the only place in that country holding secrets, because for decades, the skies above Peru have been alive with sightings of UFOs. In 2013, the sightings reached a fever pitch, and the Peruvian government reopened the department responsible for investigating unexplained aerial phenomena, UAPs. The unit brought together archaeologists, astronomers, and Peruvian Air Force personnel to investigate the sightings. And while the department has yet to come up with any conclusive proof of aliens, they may be barking up the wrong tree, because on the other side of the world lies an archive with thousands of years of secrets just sitting on miles and miles of shelving. And now Peru has an inside man. Okay, that's it for the special, but I always